Hello and welcome to my coverage of Fanfest 2023, starting with Las Vegas's Keynote. This was broadcast today, the 28th of July, and this is basically a rundown of all of the information so that you don't have to go and watch the whole thing again if you have a little time. The next expansion then for 7.x is Dawntrail. Dawntrail then has an interesting logo. There's also a trailer, which you can already find on YouTube. That will be linked at the top of the description and also pinned comment below. Dawntrail is basically about the Warrior of Light going on holiday, or at least that's how Yoshi P describes it, as a place to go for the very best summer vacation we could go on, end quote. This is based in the New World, also known as Tural to its residents. Tural then is an ancient sort of civilization located to the southwest of the map. In fact, they show the world itself, and a little over to that sort of western section, you can see that to the north there's still cloud cover, but that southwestern section almost reminiscent of where South America would be. In fact, if you were to translate to our real world Earth sort of geography, which of course there's a lot of influences from. And in fact, you'll find that with a lot of the architecture, the peoples, and a lot of the dungeons and scenery as well. It's that kind of very tribal, new world, unexplored sections, lots of beautiful stone cities, and they even mention a city of gold. So a quick note about the storyline. It says, as hope's light dawns once more, a hero looks to the horizons. Winds of opportunity bring a visitor from the new world, seeking the Warrior of Light's aid in a rite of succession to determine Tural's next ruler. It says, alongside Alphino, Alice, and Erenvile, the Warrior of Light embarks upon a journey across the Indigo Deep. Should rumour be true, the contest may lead them to the fabled gates of a city of gold. Little do they know that it will also see the Scions divided. Yoshi mentions a little bit about this for a second. It seems a bit strange to make that point, but the idea that the Scions will be divided on that particular matter. We get a slide that says, what does the contest entail? What awaits in Tural? What is the truth of the City of Gold? So there's some kind of contention for the throne of this entire continent, of these people, and we're involved in a big way, and so are the Scions, which seem to be split in either the decision of who they're backing, perhaps, or what they think is right for the landscape. So expect some interesting diversity in storylines here as well, but it does appear to be just one major location, which is good. So we're not looking at a Stormblood style expansion this time around, or at least it doesn't appear to be. So on the world map then, they show this beautiful new rendition of a world map with what we're used to. So now we're going to be talking about the hub city and the province. So the province is known as Yok Tural and the city is Tuliolal. I think I pronounced that probably very badly, but that's what it's called. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think this expansion is going to be a lot like that. They show some cutscene sort of pictures or in-game pictures of this, which is very nice. We don't have anything in motion yet. I think that will be at Fanfest Europe, like a lot of the other stuff as well. They did say a lot of that will be there. So this is that beautiful sort of harbour scene here with the ships and things, very traditional sort of almost Hingashi sort of harbour with the big sort of pagoda style buildings in the distance. Then we have a marketplace full of all these red roofs and these vibrant banners covering this section. We've got the harbour sort of side on the left there. We have distant mountains and then this forest just to the right, sort of going inland. Beautiful water that you can see through, and then a beautiful night shot as well with the moon on the beach here with these lovely sort of it just basically looks like the mist, doesn't it, on the beach, but with better looking buildings and a more tropical scene. Very nice. This is Tuliolal. This is the city that is the seat of the federal nation-state governing Tural. Tuliolal is located in the northern reaches of Yok Tural. The nation's ruler is currently Gulul Jar, a two-headed Mamul Jar, and Tuliolal is a pluralistically city pluralistic city rather, with an established sea route to Old Sharlayan. They mention extra special detail to diversity in a city, and of course you're going to get that with the trade routes that are already enabled with Old Sharlayan and the rest of the world, which is really cool. Then we look at some new areas. We get to look at 2 new areas in the game, both of which in the same province of Tural. So this is Urcopacha, which is very Peruvian almost. Forgive me if that's insultive, but I think that's very close. It's a mountainous region. There is a people living in the mountains. It says, a mountainous region in Tural, home to peoples both exceedingly large and unusually small in stature. Over 1,000 years ago, long before Tural came to be, Urcopacha was the proud heart of a giant's empire, which spanned the entirety of Tural, where the descendants live on in the region. Only ruins remain of the empire's glory days. So an empire of large giants, of things to be sort of like remnants of those, probably lots of ruins. You can imagine a sort of big door framed buildings you'd be walking through. The actual zone itself then, they show this place next to an aetheryte. It reminds me of Final Fantasy X with Besaid, with that kind of island sort of straw on the roofs with beautiful vibrant banners covering it. And then we've also got a bit of the Azim Steppe or the Calmlands kind of thing with those sort of Ronto-esque mountains in the distance. It's very nice. It does remind me of pictures I've seen of like Peru and places like in our world. Very exciting. And then the second zone in Tural is Yaktiel. I pronounce that probably very badly. It says, a thick forest accessible from Tulialal via dirigible flight over the southeastern mountains. So dense is its foliage that the forest floor sees little sunlight. Home to the primary settlements of Tural's Horofgar and Mumuljar, and replete with stunning cenotes or cenotes, I think they're underground springs, harbouring cerulean ponds and springs. Yeah, that's what they must be. It is a beautiful place. They say that this is going to be very diverse, and it's actually split into 2 separate zones, so we have 2 very different looking areas, but it's very foresty. We've got this picture here of coming through the jungle towards an aetheryte enabled town, which looks amazing. They show that increased foliage from the graphics update looking fantastic, and then an aerial shot of presumably the other side where it's a lot more humid. We've got that very thick rainforest with a thick canopy where you can barely see the ground, and you've got that humidity forming actual moisture, preventing you from seeing the floor like a fog or a mist. You can imagine walking through there getting quite wet or something like that. Very beautiful zones. Very excited to see these in the game. Now we talk about new allied tribes, which presumably we're getting tribes. We actually only get to see one in this Fanfest in the keynote. And first of all, we talk about the Pelu Pelu, which you might remember if you've played another Final Fantasy game. It says there are diminutive people inhabiting Urcopacha. So these are the people that live in the mountains, seldom seen without their distinctive masks. Natural entrepreneurs who travel the continent on alpaca back. So alpaca mount, maybe? That'd be cool. It says they're renowned producers of tea, coffee, and mezcal. So all sorts of things. So maybe, here's my tinfoil hat moment, maybe the Pelu Pelu are the crafting beast tribe or tribal quests in the future. Who knows? But I'm very excited to see what the others are. But I think they're going to be a welcome addition. Mountainous people, traders, wearing masks, traveling around on alpacas. That sounds awesome. So next up, we talk about 7.0 features. And one of the biggest feature, of course, is that we have the level cap raised to level 100. The level cap applies obviously to all combat roles, as well as we've got crafters and gatherers up to 100. Not 99, as you probably would have imagined, but 100. It does make more sense, but we're in the triple digits now, so we'll have to see what they do for future expansions. With this new expansion, they're actually adding 2 new jobs. We get to hear that there are 2 new jobs confirmed, and both of them are DPS. One of them is a melee DPS. In fact, you probably saw it. I think it might have been featured, but I'm not sure if that was Ninja or not in the trailer. Who knows? That might be the new job. I'm not sure. It looks different than Ninja because it's using only one blade. And also we're getting a caster DPS. We know nothing about the caster DPS at all, but we do get confirmation on that melee. And specifically, without giving it a name, they basically just show Yoshi P in a t-shirt again. And the t-shirt that he's wearing this time around is a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It says Mutant Mayhem on the front, and obviously they're using ninja blades. So that's why I'm thinking that the trailer actually showed the new job and not just Ninja as a poster boy. I could be wrong, it could just be Ninja, but it doesn't make sense why they would only be using one blade. They kind of looked like a swashbuckler to me, maybe a buccaneer or a corsair type, you know, like some kind of pirate job. I'm hoping that that's the way they're going with that. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe in EU Fanfest we'll get confirmation, because it seems that's when we're going to get that. But that's really exciting to hear that we're getting both a melee as well as a ranged caster. I think a lot of people will be surprised at that, myself included, especially considering how many melee we have and the physical range spots still not being increased. So we'll have to see. Right. Core battle content then, not really too much time needed to be talking about this, but traditional content makes its way into Dawntrail as well, such as fates, the hunts, treasure hunts, the quest synced side quests. They're all back, obviously. There are new dungeons, but they're not able to show us any pictures. They do have this picture with new dungeons written on it, and there is literally like a jungle scene with a boss in concept, and also this sort of mountainous ether kind of spiraling thing on the right there, which looks pretty awesome. We can speculate as much as we want, but I'm guessing a jungle dungeon and a mountain dungeon, that's really all we've got at that point. New threats then probably incurs the idea of a new trial. They do actually show this. This is one of the new monsters. You might remember this from Final Fantasy VI. This is Valagamanda. So that is going to be very relevant in the storyline. And as you can see, that concept art is absolutely beautiful. I can't wait to see what the fight's like. In 7.0, obviously further stuff that's being introduced. We've got more duty support update. All of the 7.x series storyline dungeons will have duty support, as we were expecting. There'll be new gear and recipes. On this picture we have, I believe those are slightly modified versions of previous gear that we've had in the game before, crafting and gathering stuff, but it looks very familiar. It might be just the same stuff, but I think it is new stuff. It's just, it looks very similar, at least in concept. Then they mentioned this. This is very interesting. Expansive new lifestyle content. Now, there isn't any other information on this, but they said that Island Sanctuary was a success, basically, and they're looking into doing more content like that. So whilst Island Sanctuary itself hasn't been confirmed to getting more stuff in the expansion, which it probably will anyway, right? There is more content like that. So maybe it was enough of a success that we will see something that's yet unannounced, that they mentioned that's yet unannounced, that goes down the same route. So speculation as to what that might be. Additionally, we have new variant mode dungeons. Those are a success. New alliance raids. Specifically for the alliance raid, he says in 7.1 they will be, quote, even more Final Fantasy-ish, end quote. So whatever that means, does that mean they'll be more focused on visiting locations or bosses from previous Final Fantasy games, or is it more back to the roots and less about gods? I'm guessing the latter. We have a new 8-player raid, of course, not announced, and a new ultimate raid is confirmed, at least one for the expansion, so that's cool. Blue Mage is being updated, obviously. More Hildebrand. Hildebrand has survived to live another day. We have more Hildebrand coming in 7.x, and yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as I have in 6.x. I've really loved it. We've got new plans for deep dungeons, which is excellent. And we've got a Gold Sorcerer update, which we'll talk about later because it's huge and exciting. But yeah. So past that, we also have information about the graphics update. Now, in this, they had side-by-side comparisons of pictures. We'll get to those in just a sec. But their idea behind this, their mantra, is to apply improvements to screen-wide aesthetic appeal, to offer higher resolution textures and shadows, to improve material qualities, and all that whilst preserving the overall look that you know and love of the game at the start. And that is really important because you don't want it to look so glaringly like a different game. A lot of games change change the style. Like if you look at Arcade 2's trailer compared to the original Arcade, it's a completely different looking game. This is a nice natural evolution, and as you can see with side-by-side comparisons here of screens that I took from the mini trailer they showed for this feature, the fidelity on the shield, on the hair, it is just mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing, some of the changes to these. And these aren't final as well. They say they're approaching final touches. These aren't final, but they want to pay special attention to the hair quality, the textures. The eyes have a reflective mapping. They look way better. The skin, it looks absolutely beautiful. And of course, this will not be applied to every single character in the game out of the gate. There's far too many characters NPC-wise in the game, so there will be occasions where you will have NPCs that have been updated next door to NPCs that have not yet been updated. They plan to do the 7.x series first, characters going forward, and then work their way backwards from that, and that means that they can increase the visual fidelity of those textures over time. And it isn't just to characters as well. This applies to all materials and locations. A good comparison is in this slide they show here of the gold on this pillar actually looking like gold in comparison to its, on the right here, the previous version of that, which was flat and unreflective. This applies to things like chandeliers as well, where light is actually being properly demonstrated. You get a warmth from it, and the reflections and the shadows are working. They're not just flickering messes. It is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this. Again, none of this is final. All subject to change, but they've done a phenomenal job thus far. And just looking at some of the textures, one of the biggest things though is if we look at this particular shot here, this is what the new Ilmeg looks like. It's so vibrant and pink and all of that. The particle density as well. Look at this side-by-side comparison. So this is using their new auto-generated environment tech. So instead of increasing the polygon count per item, this actually increases the memory allocation and the amount of items per area. So if you set this to ultra, presumably this is what it would look like, and you'd have all of that density. So instead of taking a picture in the ground looking like that right side of the image where you can see the floor and it looks like painted on pictures of flowers, now it'll look like you're in a field of flowers or a field of leaves, and a field of grass, that's what I was going for, or forest full of leaves. There we go. One of the biggest changes then beyond that I think is probably going to blow your mind, the thing that I've been moaning about and campaigning for the longest time, has actually been allowed to go through. They're finally doing it. They've made it so that the gear now has a palette option. So when you dye gear, you have 2 dyes per gear piece, so the amount of selection of what you can dye on gear has been drastically increased. This will obviously be on 7.x stuff and some previous to that, but it will not be on every piece of gear at launch of 7.x, obviously, right? Because it's going to take a while to go back and make it so that they have 2 dyes enabled for all of that previous gear. They also mentioned that some housing items will not be able to have 2 dye options, but they did say that housing items were included in this, so that means that you could probably, so for instance, there's a table, and the one thing wrong with it is that you can only dye the table legs. Well, now you can dye both the table legs and the top of the table, in theory, which is awesome. One of the other big system updates then is eyeglasses. This is actually a new slot of glamour, so it's a new gear slot that doesn't actually use gear. Right, so it doesn't use armory chest space, it uses some other weird space. It is another slot, which means you can now get eyeglass equipment permanently equipped to your character if you so wish to, alongside headgear. So instead of having to use fashion accessories and using those magical eyeglasses that appear and only working in certain places, you can wear glasses as well as a hat if you want to permanently on your character. If you're doing a dungeon, you could be like this Rothgar wearing a hat and glasses at the same time. This is absolutely fantastic, and I'm so happy they listened to people about the fashion accessory system. I would love to see more things along this line going forward. Very cool stuff. They've also got plans for the furnishing limit increase, so no longer will you have the same limitations on placement items for your houses. Currently, it's very difficult to sort of decorate more than one floor in a large plot, for example, or even a medium plot, and they plan this for the 7.x series. The furnishing limit increase will not be on launch of the expansion, obviously, but somewhere in the expansion itself. Very cool stuff indeed. Next up, we have changes to system requirements because, of course, the game has upped its game in terms of fidelity, and they really haven't changed that drastically on the PC specs. You'll still have PS4 support for the time being. They don't mention anything bad about that, but they do encourage, obviously, people to play the PS5 version because that's the superior console version of the game, right? If you can get a PS5, that is, or obviously on PC. The minimum requirements are still incredibly low, and you'll notice that those still are pretty close to what you would expect to still get about 60 frames, I would say, on a Steam Deck. So if you're worried about that, you should be fine. Additionally to that, then they show off this feature. This is a brand new feature that quite honestly might change the way that raids are ran forever. A lot of time people spend outside, many hours outside of a game designing, flowcharts and trying to show people toolboxes, right? Toolboxes where they can animate mechanics, and that needs to always be updated. Well, now they have something called the collaborative editor, or the strategy board, as it might be called, in the game. So you and your party of 8 people will be able to bring up a, presumably, of that fight. As you can see here, it says Ramu plus Garuda, whatever that means, and you'll be able to organize the fight and presumably move this stuff around. They describe this as a interactive online whiteboard style feature in the game, which is absolutely fantastic. That's going to mean that pugs are going to have a better time of communication without having to go external. And even for statics, honestly, this is really good. It saves you having to go inside of a dungeon that's under the same shape and try to explain it there. You've just got this picture that everyone can see. And as you can see, you can make all sorts of things. You can save these as well. Hopefully there's more than a few saves that we can have. Right, because if we can't save lots and lots of these, it's going to be a problem. Much like was the same thing with the waymarks. So excited for that. Lastly, then, they talk about stuff to come in 6.5. Of course, they'll probably talk more about 6.5 in tomorrow's live letter that we're also covering. To note, then, the free trial will now be increased as of 6.5 or 5x, before the expansion launch, all the way up to level 70 and include Stormblood. So you'll be able to obviously access the game up to Stormblood's completion, obviously as level 70 maximum for free with a release of 6.5. So that's really, really cool. I'm excited to see lots of new people get in touch with a game. It's kind of like, as my friend put it, kind of like the in an inoffensive way, like the drug dealer that lends you some really nice potent stuff and then you end up being hooked on it, but a lot less destructive. That was a terrible analogy. Let's move on. So let's talk about a collab then that they announced right at the end, which is with Fall Guys. Fall Guys itself is actually getting special skins in the game. It looks like you'll have to pay for these with a Warriors of Light Fame Pass. It is a free-to-play game, so obviously I would imagine that's one of the things. If you like Fall Guys, then that's totally up your alley. You can dress up as an Namazu, you can dress up as a Gubu, an Alisei, an Alphino for some reason, and have a great time. But a really, really exciting thing about this is it's not one-sided. We're getting Fall Guys into the Gold Saucer. So as I said earlier in the video, for Gold Saucer being massively updated, this is coming out in the 6.5 series, so maybe 6.58 or whatever that patch might be. So before the launch of the expansion, we're going to have time to kill, right? This is how we do it. We're going to be taking part in Fall Guys in apparently what looks like some kind of gate event where we get teleported in here. Hopefully this is not time limited. It looks fantastic. If you've never played Fall Guys, it's essentially your start and then you get to the finish as fast as possible, and the first 16 people that get there, or whatever amount it whittles down to over the various different rounds, will win. But they say that 24 people can enter at once, and as you can see on here with the screenshot, it says 2 out of 16 qualified, so there's 16 spots, so you've got to beat those other people to get there, and then the rest are disqualified. I think this is going to be fantastic, especially if we can unlock some great rewards like costumes, maybe some of the mascot outfits from Fall Guys, like the annoying pigeon or something like that. It'd be absolutely brilliant. It's looking fantastic, even though this might not be everyone's cup of tea. It is certainly my cup of tea, and I'm excited for there to be extra awesome crossover content, really, I think. And then finally, the big thing that might be on some people's minds, it's not necessarily bothering to me too much, but at least we can welcome new people to our game, and that's the new launch of the Xbox version of Final Fantasy XIV. So welcome, Microsoft Xbox enjoyers. You'll be able to finally play Final Fantasy XIV, a critically acclaimed MMO, and try out the free trial on your Xbox Series S and Series X. It says there's some more details coming to Xbox Series X and S, faster loading, 4K support on Series X. This is in 2024 in the spring. There's an open beta scheduled for 6.5x, so presumably you'll get to do a bit of beta testing when 6.5x comes out. Which is also mentioned to be 2024 here, by the way. Just to reiterate that, it looks like 6.5 is 2024, but I don't know, maybe January, February, I don't know. That's interesting. But the way they're doing it is digital only, so there'll be no physical editions of this, which is a bit of a sag. But yeah, they shake hands in a three-way with the CEO, and Phil Spencer's there, so that's all very nice. If you're all for that, then great. I'm just happy that there's more people playing the game, or will be. But yeah, there'll also obviously be more information and more meaty information in the Fanfest for Europe, right, in London on October the 21st, that I'll be going to in person with my friends and my girlfriend, and I will be probably broadcasting as much as possible and making videos from the floor. So yeah, hopefully that helped cover the entire keynote. It was quite a bit to take in, but boy, am I excited for Dawntrail. I'm going to keep calling it Dawntrail for a while, I think, and so will the internet, because that's what we're all like. Anyway, much love. Go watch that trailer. It's fantastic, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.